Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are really opening up a topic that sounds simple but is anything but citizenship.
Right.
We're not just talking passports or voting. We're diving straight into the deep end democratic theory, policy, those big challenges happening right now.
And the goal here is to give you that, well, that expert shortcut. We've sifted through some pretty dense readings. Think Marshall, Baubuck, Vink, Shaw. Key figures.
The heavy hitters.
Exactly. We're pulling out the core ideas, the big debates. And, a lot of this stuff comes from serious academic work, like contributions to the Oxford Handbook of Citizenship. So it's rigorous.
Signals the depth, yeah.
We want you to leave feeling like you really get the arguments shaping this whole conversation about what it means to be a citizen today.
Okay, let's get into it. If you want to grasp citizenship now, you really have to start with the foundational text, right?
Yeah.
T.H. Marshall's Citizenship and Social Class, 1965, but still so relevant.
Absolutely essential. Marshall basically built the house that everyone else has been living in, or renovating, theoretically speaking. His big insight wasn't just listing rights, it was seeing how they developed historically.
In stages.
Yes, 3 distinct stages across centuries, actually.
The famous trio of rights that defines citizenship status.
That's the one. First came civil rights. Think 18th century. These are about individual freedom, liberty, free speech, thought, faith, access to justice, establishing the person as a legal entity.
Right, the basic protections, then political rights.
Then the 19th century brings in political rights. That's about participation, voting, holding office, expanding who gets a say in exercising power. Universal suffrage fits here.
Okay.
And this is where Marshall gets really interesting, especially for policy today.
The social rights part.
Exactly. The 20th century adds social rights.
Yeah.
This is the right to a certain minimum standard of economic well-being and security. The right to live a dignified life according to the standards of the time.
So like welfare, education.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
And Marshall's key argument wasn't just, here are 3 types of rights. It was that social stability actually depends on the state delivering these social rights.
Why is that?
Because political equality, everyone gets a vote, doesn't mean much if economic inequality is, well, tearing society apart. You need that baseline of security for democracy to function properly.
So debates today about, say, universal basic income or healthcare access.
That's pure Marshall. His framework playing out right now, it connects the legal status to real economic conditions.
Okay, so Marshall gives us the structure, the what of citizenship rights. But right away, people started debating the point of it all, didn't they? How should citizens actually engage?
Oh, absolutely. And that leads us nicely into Isolde Hanhen's work, where she compares these sort of competing ideas about citizenship.
The liberal versus Republican models.
Exactly. It's fascinating how they frame the whole individual-state relationship differently.
The liberal one seems pretty intuitive, right? Focus on the individual. Autonomy.
Yeah. It sees the citizen primarily as someone holding rights that need protection from the state. It's about private liberty, pursuing your own life, minimal government interference, the market rule of law. It basically asks, what does the state owe me for protection?
And the Republican model, it kind of flips that.
Completely. It shifts the focus. It's less about protection from the state and much more about active participation in the state, commitment to the common good.
Civic virtue, public service, that kind of thing.
You got it. Collective self-governance. It asks a different question. What do I owe the community so we can govern ourselves well?
Okay, that sounds, well, quite demanding. Fostering civic duty is one thing, but doesn't that Republican ideal create its own problems?
How so?
Well, if you expect really high levels of active participation, maybe even sacrifice, doesn't that effectively exclude people who just don't have the time or resources, people working multiple jobs, dealing with poverty? They can't just drop everything for civic life.
That is the core tension, absolutely. It's a major critique. The Republican model's high bar can, maybe unintentionally, end up valuing only the contributions of those who already have advantages. Leisure time, education, resources.
So it could reinforce inequality, ironically.
Potentially, yes. Hanhen's comparison really highlights that there's no single easy answer to what a good citizen looks like. It's deeply philosophical and, frankly, contested.
Okay, so we've got the internal stuff, rights, duties, how citizens should act, but none of that matters if we don't know who's in and who's out, right? The boundaries.
Exactly. Who actually belongs? This takes us from inside the citizen's role to the outside question of membership. And that brings us to Rainer Baubuck's work on political membership and democratic boundaries.
Why are these boundaries so central, according to Baubuck?
Because fundamentally democracy means rule by the people.
Yeah.
But you first have to define who the people are. Is it based on where you live, who your parents were, some other rule?
Without clear boundaries, the whole idea of popular sovereignty just falls apart.
Precisely. Balbuck stresses that setting and policing these boundaries isn't just another policy area like, say, taxes. It's foundational. It constitutes the democracy. The health of the whole system depends on how legitimate those membership rules are seen to be.
Right. And of course, once you set those boundaries, political forces immediately start pushing on them. Which brings us right up to today's challenges, doesn't it?
It really does. Jay Shaw's 2020 work on the populist challenge to constitutional citizenship is key here.
So Bobak says defining the boundary is vital. What does Shaw say happens when populism tries to redraw that line after it's been set constitutionally?
Well, Shaw points out that populism often works by trying to shrink the definition of the people, narrowing it down to, say, an ethno-cultural group, the real people, as they might claim.
Excluding others who are legally citizens.
Exactly. And it challenges the constitutional order not just with new laws, but by trying to control the conversation itself.
Ah, that's Shaw's idea of the closing of discursive space, isn't it?
Yes, precisely. This specific kind of threat.
What does that look like in practice, closing the space?
Okay, think of it like this. Constitutional citizenship assumes kind of an open public square. All legal citizens get to debate ideas, right? Populism tries to shrink that square
Oh.
by saying only certain views or certain groups are legitimate. It tries to delegitimize opponents, critics, anyone outside their definition of the people. It basically says, your voice doesn't count here. Your concerns aren't part of our democracy.
So the debate shifts from what we should do to who even gets to speak.
Exactly. It changes the fundamental ground rules of the discussion.
Wow. Okay, so if the system itself is under stress like that, what's the average person supposed to do? What's expected of a good citizen then?
That's a great question, and it connects directly to S.W. Goodman's 2022 piece on good citizens during democratic hard times.
Linking the theory Marshall's rights, Honohan's duties to, well, right now.
Right. Goodman explores what society, or at least democratic theory, expects from citizens when things get polarized or challenged by populism.
Is it about becoming an activist? Or just like following the rules extra carefully?
It's complicated. Goodman looks at things like civic virtue, sticking to democratic norms even when you hate the outcome, participating constructively.
What's the finding?
The research suggests that in these hard times, the demands on citizens actually increase. You need more vigilance, a stronger commitment to the rules of the game, the procedures, even if you strongly disagree with who wins or what policies result.
So being a good citizen becomes almost like being a caretaker of democracy itself.
That's a good way to put it. A good custodian, yeah.
Right. Okay, we've done the definitions, the stresses, the expectations. Let's shift gears a bit to how scholars actually compare all this stuff across different countries. It seems incredibly complex.
It is. And you need solid methods. That's where Martin Vince's work on comparing citizenship regimes comes in. It's crucial.
He talks about comparing regimes, not just laws. What's the difference there? Why does that matter?
It matters hugely. A law might be, say, the number of years you need to wait for naturalization, and simple enough to compare on paper.
Okay.
But a regime is much bigger. It includes the laws, yes, but also the underlying philosophy, like, does the country believe citizenship comes from blood, just sanguinis, or birth on the soil, just soli? It includes how the rules are actually applied, the integration policies, the whole experience of membership.
Ah, so two countries could have the same 5-year waiting period on paper.
But one might make it incredibly difficult in practice, based on a philosophy of ethnic homogeneity, while the other actively encourages integration based on shared territory. Vink gives us the tools to compare these deeper structural systems, not just surface-level rules.
So you're comparing things like rules on dual citizenship, birthright status, integration tests, but always connecting it back to that core national idea of who should belong.
That's the key. This systematic regime-level comparison lets us see real patterns globally, understand why countries differ rather than just listing statutes.
Makes sense. And that focus on practical reality, on policy, leads us to the last piece we wanted to touch on S.W. Goodman again, but this time, a 2023 review.
Right, this piece in the Annual Review of Political Science, it really hammers home why citizenship studies needs to focus intensely on policy causes and policy consequences.
Taking Vink's methods and asking, what does it all mean in the real world?
Exactly. This is where it really connects to you, the listener. It's not just theory anymore.
So instead of just what is citizenship,
Hmm.
we're asking why did this country make this citizenship law? That's the cause.
Yes. What political pressures, what economic situations, what campaign promises led to this specific rule being adopted?
And the consequences.
How does that rule then actually affect people and society? Does tightening naturalization rules reduce immigrant voting? Does it affect social cohesion? Does it change economic outcomes for families? Goodman argues we need to trace these causal links.
Bridging the gap between abstract ideas and concrete impact.
That's the goal, making the academic study directly relevant to understanding societal effects.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground very quickly here. From the absolute foundations with Marshall's rights, civil, political, social.
And remembering that fight over social and economic fairness is still the live wire in Marshall's framework today.
Right. Then we saw how even the definition gets complicated with Hanahan's liberal versus Republican citizen ideals.
The protected individual versus the active participant.
Then Babak reminding us that none of it works without legitimate boundaries defining who's actually in the Democratic Club.
Which, as Shaw showed us, gets stress-tested by things like populism closing down the space for debate.
Forcing us, as Goodman explored, to think harder about what being a good citizen means when democracy feels strained.
And finally, seeing how scholars like Vink and Goodman are building tools to compare these regimes systematically and track the real-world policy causes and effects.
It really feels like the field is moving towards this very practical, comparative, policy-focused analysis now.
I think that's fair to say. At the end of the day, whether you experience citizenship through your identity, through encountering a specific policy, or even through protest, these theories we've discussed, they're always there, shaping the background.
Influencing the rights we think we have, how policies get made.
Absolutely. The tools from Vink and Goodman help us understand not just what the rules are, but why they exist and who they truly impact.
So what's the final takeaway for you listening to all this? How should you process this information?
Well, if citizenship is increasingly understood through its concrete policy causes and consequences, maybe you should start asking some forward-looking questions.
Like what?
Like, if Marshall was right that social rights are vital for stability, what unintended consequences might our current policies on immigration, welfare, naturalization, whatever, be creating down the road? How might they reshape citizenship itself and what we expect from a good citizen 10 years from now?
So watch policy debates, but watch them through that lens of Marshall's three rights: civil, political, and social.
Exactly. Because that historical blueprint, it's being actively redrawn as we speak. Paying attention to that dimension is key.